Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple or Android. You can use Spotify on Android. Or Apple, you go to the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Apple also offers you Apple Podcasts. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Access to 10 different channels, including our draft channel, our transaction channel. You can bypass the Apple upcharge by just clicking on the link that's here in the description on both the YouTube and the podcast feeds. This is where you get the most heat information, conversation, and more. We talk about the podcasts after we do them, and we got stage shows coming back as well. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down your $5. You get $50 to play right away. You can also join our contest to win more promo funds. Look for the tweets prior to finals games. And just back me because I've been winning lately. Look at this. Not just on the NBA, but also on the NHL. I've won 10 of my last 12 cards. I've just jinxed the entire thing. Anyway, check it out. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. It's prizepicks.com, the official fantasy partner of the Five Reasons Sports Network, and it is legal in the state of Florida. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious. Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne.
Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frauds.
Down to Biscayne.
Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. Make sure you check out recent episodes, including the one I did with Brian Fonseca and Eternal Bast, and the fact that they agreed on everything and I didn't. Bit of a surprise, but we went through the 5 players that we would start the Heat with right now based on contract, role, future, etc. You can only choose 5 from the roster, and we came to the same agreement on 4. The 5th one took half of the episode. I got Alex Toledo with me. Excuse me. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick 5 Reasons Sports. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Today we're going to get a little more topical with what's actually been in the news. We're going to try to read some tea leaves here, and there's a couple players we expected to be talking about a lot. One was Giannis, and one was Kevin Durant. Of course, Giannis has always been the pipe dream a lot of different ways because unlike Kevin Durant, he hasn't team jumped. He's wanted to be in Milwaukee. There was a lot of chatter about the possibility of him leaving or asking for a trade, meetings that were supposed to happen. He's in Rio right now, and he put something on Instagram, which we'll touch on in a second. No Dame Lillard coming up this upcoming season because he tore his Achilles, because we thought that changed the equation, but maybe it didn't. And then there's KD, and I know we're confusing you about KD, because I've had guests on here who have said it's going to be easy for the Heat to get him. Like Brian Gelsiler from SiriusXM NBA is like, well, Miami makes the most sense. All these other teams don't make sense for this reason or another. But now it seems like KD has become kind of the consolation prize, Alex, for teams that might have engaged on Giannis. I'll start here with Giannis's comment. And then the topic here today is, like, how far do you go in a bidding war for Kevin Durant at this stage? Because it does seem like his price could go up for teams that were thinking, okay, we'll take a run at Giannis, and if we can't, because Giannis is 7 years younger than Durant, then we'll go after Durant, but Giannis may not even be an option. So Giannis is in Rio, and he posted on Instagram and various other places, I'm rooting for good basketball. The finals are different. I hope to be back soon with the Bucks. Now, he's been tweeting about other things, like defending LeBron's bag or lack of bag or all that stuff. Of course, that's something that's been said about Giannis. But this is being tweeted out by kind of the aggregators like EuroHoopsNet. Giannis Antetokounmpo wants to return to the NBA Finals with the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know if that's poor translation or poor aggregation or what. But again, he said the finals are different. I hope to be back soon with the Bucks. Are you reading into that as Giannis is staying?
I mean, it's tough to not look at that and come out on the other side with, if you're one of these teams that was, that's plan A for this offseason, right? Like everything seems like Giannis is going to be out of the door. Like you mentioned, Dame gone for a year. He's going to be whatever he is, 36, 37 when he comes back, coming off a torn Achilles as a small guard, despite how good of a shooter he is. Like that's just not, I don't know if that's the outlook for Giannis. Like he's already played for them for so many years, won the title for them, and almost literally saved basketball in Milwaukee. If I remember correctly, that was one of those teams that was like considering selling off and moving at one point. Before
Got him a new arena, Alex. Got him a new arena.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Like, so I just think like he is good. He can leave to whatever team theoretically, and they're not going to burn his jerseys and put it on social media. I mean, maybe some clout chasers do, but at the end of the day, right? Since I haven't said that in a while, I think he's good in Milwaukee. So I think if he wanted to, he could. But like you said, he's an inherently loyal guy. He's made that clear over and over again for years. So it's just like, despite everything, despite the Dame stuff, despite looking like, that Brook Lopez might be gone, Bobby Portis is a free agent. In general, their outlook, like it's not like they have a lot of great young players. They actually traded a decent one for Kuzma, and they fell on their face with that, while also trading Middleton, a guy that was with Giannis as his co-star for years. Like it just seems like, okay, now is the time for things to come apart. So part of me still thinks like, okay, maybe he just wants to keep it on the down low. He doesn't like, if he doesn't want to, make it a public thing about how he wants to leave Milwaukee. He's saying the right things now, and then eventually, ask in private to be traded. Part of me is thinking about it like that, but then other part of me is like, no, Giannis is clearly like different when it comes to this. So I
think you just went mute here for a second. So I'll fill in the gaps here a little bit because I did catch what you said before the mic went. He's always been different in this regard than a lot of other guys. Remember, he came to the United States, and I remember doing a piece on him for Bleacher Report when he was a rookie, and he basically broke down when he spoke about having to try to assimilate, that it was very challenging for him at first. He was embraced by the city of Milwaukee. We saw him grow literally. Remember how skinny he was as a rookie and what he looks like now. He won a championship with them. It was always going to be difficult to leave, but I'm with you on all the factors that maybe believe he might this time. And it goes back to, again, Drew being traded for Dame. Now Dame is hurt. Middleton, Brook Lopez, etc. I don't really know what their plan is because they don't really attract a lot of free agents in general. They don't have much financial flexibility, and their young players are not that good. Like they Bucks fans have been pushing for these guys to play more, but they really haven't shown much. Now this comes in for our guy Ty Windish, who's been on the podcast with us. He covers the Bucks. He says, anyway, it was wall-to-wall NBA news when ESPN reported that he potentially could ponder playing for another team. So I assume Giannis saying he wants to get back to the finals with the Bucks will also be a huge national story, right? Right? No, it won't be. We know it won't be because, again, they only really care about essentially New York, LA, and maybe occasionally San Francisco. So I'm not ready to put it entirely to bed. Anything can go wrong at this stage. There have been reports he has a pretty good relationship with Doc Rivers, for whatever that's worth. And Doc's not there, and whatever we think of as a coach, Doc's not there for a rebuild. Like they're already paying like 3 coaches because they fired a couple. I think Bud's still getting paid by them, which goes back to like 2 years, more than 2 years ago. So again, I don't know that they're that well positioned to put pieces around him, but now it does look like the lean is for him to stay, and that gets us into the Durant situation because the lean with him is not to stay. That situation was so bungled by their ownership in particular, and now they've got a different front office. James Jones has no power. They've promoted another guy. Bartlestein in the front office is dealing with all kinds of personal stuff. There's all kinds of things going on with Phoenix. But the one thing that's clear is they're building around Devin Booker, and they're going to trade KD. And all the reports are that the trade of KD is going to come prior to the draft. But I'm looking at these other teams, and we're hearing, Alex, that this is going to be this summer of movement. Teams are going to get ahead of it. There's going to be a ton of activity. And I'm looking at these teams and where they're going to get a difference-making veteran star. And I'm not seeing a lot of them. Like if you take Giannis out of the equation, unless somebody's trading for Trey, and you know my doubts about Trey, I don't think LaMelo's that guy, and he's not going anywhere. Like, if not, and those players are younger, obviously, haven't proven what KD has, but obviously they've got all-star pedigrees one way or another. Like, are you seeing anybody else? Like, if you're I mean, Lauri Markkanen, is that what we're talking about here? Like, who are the players that you're going to look at and say, okay, if he's our second best player and we can pay him, which is the other issue. We got all these teams that are going to try to get under the second apron and selling off. If he's our second best player, we can do some damage. Do you see? I mean, Jimmy would have been that guy this offseason, but obviously he's already found a home. So
So you mean like for other veteran teams that are looking for
yeah,
another
like
piece?
teams that are looking to push ahead. Like if you're
Yeah.
looking at a Houston, if you're looking at some Minnesota, okay, teams that could be in contention to try to knock OKC off next year. We thought OKC could be one of those teams, but more likely, I think, to keep their core roster together if they win a championship. But if you're looking at some of those teams, or even say in Orlando or Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
teams in the East that have young cornerstone pieces.
Yep.
If not KD, and Toronto is another one of those. Like, if not, is there even a Siakam in the mix here, like a player of that, not him specifically, but a player of that quality? Like, who is there other than KD? And that's what kind of concerns me if the Heat are going to get fixated on him, and then ultimately you're competing with 3 or 4 other teams, and then you're kind of pot committed, and you're deciding whether or not you're going to give up. End up giving up more than maybe you should with where they stand as a franchise right now. Is that? Do you see anybody else?
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated because, like you mentioned, it's like some of the guys that have been thrown around before, like Trey, like Markkanen. Ja, I'm very skeptical that he gets moved. I'm skeptical LaMelo gets moved. So after you get out of that class of guys, like there's the stuff in New Orleans where it's like, according to one guy, nobody's untouchable or whatever. And I know
Right.
you did the episode, the Pelicans reporter about Trey Murphy, like that would be one that I'd absolutely look at if I'm the Heat, although it's not ideal. I mean, I'm sorry, I know this is just a Heat related question, but just in general, like Trey
Yeah,
Murphy is
no.
somebody that could help a winning team. Zion is a different story because he's so much more
Mhm.
like volatile. You don't know how much he's going to play, how much he's not going to play. It might be a weird fit with some other teams that already have a core in place. Trey Murphy doesn't have those issues. Like, he just had a breakout season. He's a two-way wing who doesn't need to dominate the ball to be effective, who's shown that he can score the ball. Like that's one that I would be thinking about in general, if I'm a team trying to make a swing, whether it's the Heat or not. But just in general, you're right. Like KD is the only one that's obviously available. After that, it's like,
Mhm.
I mean, shit. And then there's also DeRozan, but that's a
Right.
different class of guy as
Right.
well.
Do you think? Let me ask. I was thinking about DeRozan the other day, and we've done episodes about DeRozan. But when I asked Pat the question about managing an aging star, and Pat gave the answer basically if it's the right guy, and we all jumped to the KD conclusion because I think that's who he meant. Could he have also been speaking of DeMar DeRozan?
That
I know
is
he
so
meant to
funny.
say I hope not, but that occurred to me the other day. I'm like, wait a second. I
That
just
would
said it
be
was just
another chapter
KD.
in the chronicles of the Ethan Jinx, because you're almost like trying to set him up to answer a question about KD, and then it ends up becoming DeRozan. I mean, that
It ends
quote
up being
made
DeRozan.
the Heat Twitter account. Like that one.
Yeah, I know.
That one was
I know.
was going around. So
Well,
for
they
it to
didn't
end up
include my
with
question,
DeRozan,
but I appreciate that included the answer. Yeah, I mean, could it? I mean, could it be? I mean, we did episodes about DeRozan, but I mean, is DeRozan still again? You and I did this. We went through his numbers. Okay, his numbers are pretty much where they've been his whole career. Is he a star still? Is that even fair to categorize him as that at age
yeah, we're getting into
35?
semantics now. What I know is
Yeah,
he'll still get you 20 plus. He's a
yeah,
bucket getter, and he is the ultimate epitome of that. So what
right.
you're doing with him, and he doesn't cost as much as the other guys. That seems very much a move. I know that's not what this podcast is about, but that
Right.
totally seems, I don't know, especially knowing the history of how many times they've been interested, not necessarily gone like all out, but now that
Right.
Jimmy is gone, if they decide, no, we're not going to bottom out, instead of having this gap year where, I don't know, like let's say they try to get out from under the first apron by waiving
Mhm,
Duncan and not bringing back Davion, things that would just depress everybody, right? And
mhm.
not making any big trades. Like instead of that, they're like, let's just go with DeRozan, just like shake things up. Like this is a consolation prize, sell some tickets. You don't mess with the flexibility, and you're still competitive. That very much sounds like a Heat move. Like I'm not trying to defend it, but the way they operate, like
Yeah. And then he's averaging
man, he just
24. He's
doesn't get
averaging
there.
23, 24 through the first 4 weeks of the season. We're all celebrating it. And then we get towards the playoffs and he drops in the playoffs like he typically has. But again, another episode, but it just occurred to me the other day. All right. So on the other side
Playing
of
better
this,
and joining the playing champs.
well, Sacramento tried that. Okay. Let's talk about another new sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. And then on the other side, we will get into KD. Look, everybody here thinks I'm old, because I am. You see the wired headphones. I got that. With a lot of things, my daughter thinks I met Abraham Lincoln. Everybody on the podcast thinks I was there for Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. But with some things, I got to be a little bit more modern, and that includes Cash App. Cash App is the best way to send and receive money. Everybody, all of our hosts have Cash App, right, Alex? We all have Cash App. You have Cash App. Brady has Cash App. Even Greg has Cash App. I don't know why I said even Greg, but he's closer to my age.
Even Greg is crazy.
Even Greg, making money moves should be easy. That's why there's Cash App. It's fast, safe, and much more personalized than the other apps out there. No extra hoops to jump through, no extra stress. All the tools right there to help you cash in. Plus, sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They look out for you if something seems sketchy, or they see you maybe sending money to a potential scammer, maybe even a Knicks fan. They'll warn you and make you think twice before you hit send. It's like having a personal bodyguard for your cash. For whatever reason, you don't already have Cash App like we all do, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, and enter our code. It's pretty easy. On the floor. Okay, so not off the floor like our Discord server. On the floor. It's in your profile, and enter the code there. Send $5 to a friend. You get $10 for just getting started. That's right. Send 5 to a friend. You get 10 for just getting started. So for limited time only, new Cash App users can use that exclusive code to earn additional cash. There's no catch. Download the Cash App and download Cash App and sign up and use the exclusive referral code on the floor in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. I don't know why I said even Greg. I'm not even sure why I did that. Anyway, Kevin Durant. I've said, look, this is where I am on this, and I know I'm splitting hairs on a lot of stuff because I'm kind of like, I want to keep Tyler long term, but not at $50 million a year. I kind of want to see Kevin Durant play basketball up close, but I don't want to give away the whole future of the franchise to do it. And Matt Ishbia was asking for that. And by the way, since Matt Ishbia was asking for that from Heat officials back in February, he has since said he's going to be more involved than he was before, that he hasn't been involved enough. I can
And their
tell
new
you, the man
GM
has
is like
been
apparently, he's a Matt Ishbia guy.
right. So this is basically like he's going to be asking for the world. They're going to be trying to drum up, as they should, as many suitors as possible. We've talked about some of them: Houston, Minnesota, in the East, maybe Orlando, one of them. Toronto is another one. New York has surfaced. Of course, I always put the New York stuff. It's funny. The New York stuff that ends up happening is not the stuff that's ever reported. The ESPN hypes everything is going to come from New York, and then like the Karl Anthony Towns for Randall trade will come out of nowhere, right? Like that's what typically happens. So I don't read too much into reports about New York. It doesn't mean they won't do anything. It just means it's probably not going to be what the national guys are saying. Ultimately, it's going to end up being something else. But we talked about some of the other teams in the West. OKC, I don't think is a suitor at this
The
point.
Clippers got thrown in yesterday by somebody.
The Clippers will typically get thrown in. It depends if they want to try to maximize his win. Now, Zach Lowe has also indicated he sees a path for KD to Miami in a trade that actually didn't look too bad to me. It was like Wiggins fronting it, the contract filler and all that kind of stuff. But it was like Jovic or Jaquez and nowhere. And like if you can make that deal, I think you make it. But I'm just wondering now if Giannis is off the table, these teams are going to make a push for KD, right? And would that concern you if the Heat have to go too far now?
Absolutely, it would concern me. No, it's not a given that every team is going to go all out for him that was involved in Giannis, and I think that's where the gray area can come, and that's where the market will be determined. Because, like, let's say San Antonio, right? One that's there's been a lot of smoke lately about him going there and all that stuff about somebody in his, in his group of friends saying that's where he wants to go or that's where he thinks he'll end up. Whatever, like. let's use them as an example, right? That's one with Victor, having just traded for Fox, they have an accelerated timeline. They have a whole bevy of assets they can trade. Is Durant the right move for them? It would be great. Like Fox, KD, Wemby, Castle, and whatever else you have left. Like that's a real contender. I think that's a contender. Maybe not a favorite, but is that the move that you cash some of these assets on? Maybe it is, because they absolutely will not give up the number 2 pick for KD. I can just tell you that now without any reporting. I would be absolutely floored if they were to give that pick up for KD. It just doesn't make sense. So I think you'd be adding him not only to Castle, Wemby, and Fox, but you'd also be getting Dylan Harper there if you draft him or whatever they decide to do with that pick. Like, whereas with Giannis, you're giving up that pick and a lot more. So look, it makes sense. But like, again, if they're just like, he's a little bit too outside of the timeline with Fox and Wemby, I can get that. At the same time, guys with Wemby's size and history, despite how flexible he is and how much better he moves than other guys, like, I could see it the same way and be like, hey, let's just go for it right now. KD's got something to give right now. Let's go for it right now. It won't cost us our entire future. So I can really see it either way. I think it's just going to come down to some of these teams that were maybe centering, on Giannis, and it's gonna be up to them to decide how much is worth it for KD. And I think, outside of like San Antonio and OKC, like those type of teams that have all those assets, maybe even a Houston, right? Like I think we're gonna get more or less the same teams that we expected already to be in it, like Minnesota, Houston, So I just think in general, it comes down to the teams that have the most assets and if they're going to be willing to cash in for KD.
And New York in the East, and we talked about obviously Toronto, Detroit, Orlando. These are some teams that have come up. I think the San Antonio situation, and I'm with you, they should not and will not give up the number 2 pick of the draft to do that. I mean, Giannis is a different situation, but not for KD, not at this stage. I think what you hit on is where it may end up going with them. And I know there are reports, I know Gambo has been on top of things in Phoenix, has sort of indicated that that's the direction it's going. Bill Simmons, who I don't really, I trust his reporting about a lot of stuff. If you look back, he sort of hears a whisper of things and then puts it out as kind of a pseudo report. I know he said a deal's already done between San Antonio and Durant. If it doesn't, he did say that. He said, yeah, he essentially said that. I don't want to misquote because then I'm doing what the aggregators are doing. But if you look up Bill Simmons on Twitter, he was fairly definitive that he believes the deal has been done. I should say that he believes.
Wow,
but still,
that. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So if that's the case, and I don't think it's the case, but if that is the case, the reason that San Antonio would be doing it is for exactly what you're saying, that they know that Wemby's timeline could be limited. Now they have a 38-year-old coach. He's essentially it's the same situation as Spo getting the job in Miami at age 38, where they stayed in house and went with somebody that everybody didn't know quite as well. And
maybe a year older than KD.
Right, exactly. Now I'm curious to see how that works. Now KD with coaches, it's also a strange deal because didn't he want Nash in Brooklyn, but then they weren't really listening to Nash. I mean, I don't think Nash was a great coach, but if you're not listening to Steve Nash, but he was dealing with Kyrie, Harden, and all that stuff. I think the one reason that it could make some sense is Wemby's timeline. If I were them, I wouldn't extend KD though. But no. I think that's probably part of the. But isn't that part of the deal? Are you going to keep him as a rental? Actually, essentially,
I would consider it like if it's just like a one or one extra year, maybe 2, because that's something that you do if you're all in. You're all in on the immediate short term. And I think at that point they would be. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I think the Spurs thing makes a whole lot of sense because they can essentially go all in on the short-term window. And then when KD is out of his, he's not averaging 25, 26 anymore. He's not that guy anymore. You still got Harper or whatever you do with that second pick. You still got Castle. You still got Wemby.
And you still have Wemby. Right.
And you've got Fox.
And you still have whatever you got for Fox. Right. Or you can move Fox if you want to.
They can play both sides. They can play the short-term window and the long-term. So that's why it makes sense.
They can do it more. They can do it more effectively than Golden State did it because Golden State's best players continued to be their oldest players. And they tried to do it. All the guys that they drafted, the center, Wiseman, Kuminga, all these young guys that they drafted, some of which panned out and most of which didn't. They struggle with the 2 timeline thing. But you're right, the Spurs could push the 2 timeline thing and get Wemby meaningful playoff action early in his career, which I could see Pop, who's still part of that organization, by the way, and RC Buford wanting to do. And plus, I think that Durant and Wemby would get along pretty well, actually, because Wemby is no drama at all. And Durant really just wants to go play basketball, and that's it. I guess the larger context of this is not why it would make sense for the Spurs or not, although that's sort of how we got into this. It's if you're competing with the Spurs, like, and you're Miami, like, what are you offering that's going to beat whatever they can offer? And beyond that, what are you offering KD other than we're in the East? Like, it's like, okay, you can play with Bam. Well, I can play with Wemby. Like, right? I mean, what are you offering?
It's Miami. We're in the East. We know KD is a single man. No, but in all seriousness, I do think like it's the same stuff that we always talked about. The state tax, Miami. You're in the
no
East.
state tax in Texas either, though.
Yeah, but at that point, it's like I wonder if it comes down to like KD gives out a list of teams he'd be willing to play for, and it coincides with some of the teams that are willing to trade for him, and then at that point, it just gets down to a bidding war, and that's why I would be concerned for the Heat. But if you're just trying to ask me like what would be a Heat offer that could potentially beat the Spurs, like let's say that they're not going to offer the second pick. Let's say their pick, their package centers 14th. Around that 14th pick they have. Right. Like the salaries of like Sohan, maybe Devin Vassell, maybe a Harrison Barnes or Keldon Johnson, like to make the salary work. That's a decent one. Not to mention like whatever other pick they're going to throw in there. That's a decent one. I think at that point the Heat would have to throw in they would have to throw in the number 20 pick for sure, and probably 1 or 2 of the other young guys. And even then, it might not match up. I guess it just depends on how high they are on like a Vassell and Jeremy Sohan, who are still pretty young. It gets tough, man. Like the Knicks, I don't think are going to have a real chance because they don't have a lot of picks they can offer. And I don't know, like after everything they gave, after giving up so many unprotected picks for Bridges, are they just going to flip him for KD, who's going to be 37 when the year starts? That's
just goes back the other direction. And the other part is like Towns. Apparently, Phoenix doesn't have any interest in Towns. So if that's the case, although I actually think Towns and Booker. Although defensively, I worry about that. But Towns and Booker, they line up better age-wise.
And together at Kentucky, they're friends.
Right. So I think that's a case that could be made there if they're still trying to compete and they're still willing to pay tax, not as much as obviously this past year, the second apron situation.
A bidding war with Houston, don't love that. Really a bidding war with like either San Antonio, Houston, wouldn't love that for the Heat's sake.
Anybody with anybody, like it feels
Minnesota.
to me, and again with any maybe, but then you're saying to KD because he has some say in this because he's not a free agent, but he can make things difficult if he wants to. And I understand the respect he has for Spoelstra and the Heat organization and the attraction to Miami and all that. And obviously, I have great respect for Bam. But if you're saying to KD, you can go try to win with Bam in the East or you can win with Ant in the West, you're still going to choose Ant.
Yeah, I feel that. But it's also Minnesota.
It is. I mean, that's what we're offering is that it's 91 degrees outside today.
It wouldn't compare to like it wouldn't compare to what he did with the Warriors, obviously, in that move and all the backlash it got. But also considering that, Edwards and the Timberwolves eliminated them last season in the fashion that it happened. Is this
but they didn't get it. But they didn't. I know, but they didn't get over the hump, though. That's another thing. So, and we've done this before, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. But when he almost came here in 2016, it was basically what Dragic and Whiteside signed. So now it's Hero and Bam signed.
Hey, there you go. We're right back in the same place. We're right back to square one.
Except he's 9 years older, as are we all. All right, we'll see where it goes. But I think you and I are both. There's a little bit of trepidation here about trying to get in a bidding war with some of these teams. And when I had Gelsiler on about 10 days ago, I'd be curious to see what Brian thinks now. Because about 10 days ago, he was like, I don't think they're going to have a lot of competition for him. But part of his reasoning was that teams were going to go after Giannis. And now that they're not, That's why we're titling the episode this way. Anyway, more episodes to come. We'll continue to discuss this as we go forward. I think we should just do a KD episode every day. Just KD in the morning, KD at night. Why not? Until we start to get to the DeMar DeRozan daily cycle. Thanks to Alex. Thanks to Cash App. Use that code when you download On the Floor. If you want to send me the $5, that's fine. I'll give you my Cash App. You can send me the $5, and they'll give you 10. That's a good way to make money off this. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.